paper somewhere and say,
Hi, I'm Eric Sabria, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in a home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Week That Was. I'm Saeed Khan here in beautiful, sunny Metro Detroit, having survived a pretty stiff line of boomers last night. So I hope everybody's doing well. I hope you have your power or it's been restored, and for no other reason than to tune into this show. So
my dog woke me up like digging deep in the closet for shelter. Wow. So yeah, it was.
And is that your lowest floor windowless room there, Nancy?
Well, it's the one that we're on. It's funny because when I remember a couple of years ago during a tornado warning when the weather was getting very hairy, my dog, went to the basement, which I thought was like, who taught them this? Did they go to dog school to learn to go to the basement? So anyway.
Comfortably through the night.
Yeah.
Okay, that's right.
And
I
without
thought about the pitch. I thought about the pitch. Wow.
And without the benefit of an opposable thumb, Nancy, was she cranking the hand crank radio for emergencies?
She relies on the dog.
She was typing.
That would be one for David Letterman's old stupid pet tricks. That would be awesome. Well, listen, we've got a great show because, of course, as usual, a lot has been going on over the past 7 days. We are joined with public relations specialist Beverly Watts. We have one of our esteemed troika of lawyers right now, Joel Sklar, and he's looking. Hey, Joel, you just gave that same gesture that you do in your first year of law school. Look to the right, look to the left. One of you is not going to make it, and apparently.
Exactly. Okay, but continue.
Labor and community activist Barb Ingalls, veteran journalist Nancy Derringer, and of course co-founder of Deadline Detroit, Allan Lengel. We may have others join us soon because, of course, some of our people are dispatched overseas. I think actually this show now has more bureau chiefs overseas than CNN. So, speaking of overseas, and given the roller coaster that's been going on with the financial markets, it looks like the United States and China have agreed to slash most of the tariffs for now. It looks like instead of the 145% tariffs on Chinese goods, we are down now to only 30%. And the Chinese have said that they will lower their tariffs down to only 10%. And we're joined now with lawyer Steve Fishman as well. Okay. So, is this a capitulation of Trump? Was this some kind of master plan in order to create volatility in the markets for some kind of arbitrage to tip off those who have to have more than what they already have? What's going on?
Yes.
Yes,
this has been simple answers to unnecessarily complicated questions. I think this is absolutely a capitulation by Trump, and and he'll spin it any number of ways that this was his master genius plan all along. But I don't see this as anything other than Trump having to acknowledge reality, which is that his plan was completely brain dead. So.
Well, I mean, you have all of these freighters that were coming across the Pacific, and then they were told that there weren't going to be any more, and now it looks like there's going to be even more coming across, so there's going to be a glut at the ports of Seattle and the ports of Los Angeles. Steve?
It seems to me it's the normal situation with him. He figured he could bully Z. He picked the wrong guy. They told him to go screw themselves, and they battled back, and both economies would have gone in the tank. So, of course, what does he do? Like all bullies, when somebody steps up to him, punches him in the nose, they say, oh, yeah, okay, 10%. I mean, to me, people waste a lot of time trying to analyze a guy with a criminal mind who's a bully. And That's all there is to it. I don't see
And
any.
meanwhile, we all went and filled up our garages with toilet paper and paper towel.
Beverly, I think you went back into COVID era there for a second.
We went to our go-to, right?
Allan Lengel and I didn't have to do that because it was around Passover, and as long as you're eating matzah, you don't need toilet paper.
Hey, Steve, what is Yiddish for TMI?
I think it's interesting though, even with the adjustment on the tariffs or whatever, Walmart, the CEO is saying they're going to have to raise their prices, and so it'll be interesting the impact. I mean, you have to figure that Walmart has a fair amount of Trump supporters, and you wonder how that'll process through them. So.
And the
Joel.
deals made, are going to benefit consumers abroad, not here. So the deal with Britain is a great deal for consumers, in the UK, right? Great for us, for the consumer here. It's terrible. The same is going to be true with the China tariffs. It's going to be great because they're going to get more. It's going to be great for the consumers in China. Terrible for consumers here.
En contraire, Joel, I believe that in the case of the UK, Rolls-Royce is exempt from the higher tariffs. So I think you need to go car shopping.
Need a new one.
Actually, don't you just need like an everyday car?
Yeah. Get you on my Porsche around.
There you go. Well, I mean, but do you think here we are, what is it, 120, 130 days into the second term? Do you think that people are going to have a long enough memory to consider what this volatility meant to them and the impact that it had to them, say in the midterms and certainly in 2028 when Trump isn't even on the ticket? Hopefully. Steve?
I think it's the same thing we say every week. You're going to have that 30% or whatever, 35%, however many of them are MAGA diehards. And nothing will change their mind because they don't even hear the news. But I think if it affects regular people the way we're all talking, particularly people in those red states. I mean, I keep listening to Governor Beshear, talking about Kentucky. And, Kentucky's got a lot of people who rely on what we would call the welfare, whether it's Medicaid or whatever. But in the old days, it was the welfare. And these are white hillbillies. They can't
And
point
Alabama.
they can't say, oh, look, it's a bunch of Detroiters, which is a code for it's a bunch of black folk.
Right.
I think that the people who get affected by it, who aren't total MAGA lunatics, I think, it'll make a difference. Absolutely.
I agree.
Right. I think we're also already starting to see the effect on the auto industry. For one thing, where I worked in advertising. I worked at the papers and I worked at other places that deal with automotive very heavily, and the heavy job cuts are starting already in advertising agencies and all of the marketing, and this is all in waiting for something worse to happen, and it's not stopping just because he dropped back. And
right. And it's not just it's not just in retail or the food industry. You look at Microsoft and all these other companies, they're having massive layoffs. And so to Steve's point, you're absolutely right. It's just not going to affect the total urban areas. But the MAGA, I totally agree. It's nothing you're going to do to change their mind. But I think it's starting to resonate with other folk who are not MAGA supporters that supported Trump. I don't think they're going to forget by Christmas or the next 2 years. No.
I don't know if you guys saw that. I can't remember the guy's name. The guy who's running against, he's one of the Democrats that wants to run against Joni Ernst. I can't remember his name. But when you read the way he's talking to everybody, and he's talking tachlis, which you guys know means you're talking serious, and he sounds like a conservative Republican, but he's calling her out on all of these things, and that's what the Democrats need to do. It's not a matter of whether they're liberals or not. It's just to make sure that people understand what these people are doing to you is affecting you, your pocketbook, your children, your neighborhood. And I think, I can't remember this guy's name, but God, I was impressed with him. And he has a very streetwise way of talking. He's cursing, and they ask him about that. He says, hey, the people in Iowa curse too. They won't hold it against me.
He's a vet, isn't he?
Yes.
Isn't he a veteran? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And those guys are serious as can be of what's happening to the military and to retired and to former. And if they mess with Medicare and Medicaid and the veterans completely, then it's going to get ugly, because that is going to affect so many people.
You just put me in the dark.
Right.
So we are joined actually by our temporary Portuguese bureau chief,
Where
Bill
apparently
Seikaly, who apparently
war zone.
Just went out in the dark. Hold on, guys.
got the discount plan at the hotel.
Terrifying.
Bill,
Let him
Booby,
out.
Where is he at?
Bill Booby, put the
Really
hotel
know?
key. Put the hotel key in the slot.
There
There you go.
Now, see, Bill, other than that, he's going to have to put up your photo. So you don't want that.
I just went through the most harrowing drive to get here, guys. Lisbon was beautiful. Porto was beautiful. The drive-in. Oh, no.
Oh, why are you doing this to him?
Because
I
we take
longed for the
requests,
days.
and that was from Beverly.
Yeah.
I get you, Beverly. I get you. I have a long memory. Short hair, but a long memory.
That's just telling you that I missed you, Bill. That's
Alan.
we talk about, we're talking about unshaking or not moving. The MAGA is a religion. It's a cult, whatever. It's never going to change. But I think he is scaring the shit out of moderate Republicans, independents. And that's where, to shake that loose and convert that for the 2026 elections may be possible. Bill.
So did you read, there was an article in the Atlantic, I think it was the Atlantic, this morning, that said that he hasn't lost a single vote, that his supporters are still in line behind him. I'll try to find this while I'm sorry, I'm a little frantic here. I'm usually more organized. I hope you're right, Alan, but I've been saying that about everybody who predicts the demise of Trump for 8 years. He hasn't lost any steam, and his rabid supporters are so rabid, and we, the others, are so disorganized in our efforts against him that I'm concerned that you're not correct again.
But Bill, I think
I'm on your side.
I think, Bill, there may actually be an Achilles heel to Trump among MAGA. When his mother dipped him in the Hudson River, she held him by a Qatar 747 jet, which apparently seems to have really agitated people both on the left for what seems to be blatant corruption, and also MAGA for probably blatant racist reasons, that he's getting himself a 747 jet from Qatar. Nancy.
Some MAGA. I don't think it's. I mean, I think this is it peeled off a few of the most racist like Laura Loomer and Ben Shapiro and a few other people, but there's still a large chunk of MAGA who thinks this is absolutely fine and are comparing it, in fact, to the Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty was a gift. I don't see what the big deal is. And if this is supposed to be approved by Congress, if it goes any further, and it would not surprise me one bit if Congress didn't fall in line and say this is
We've got
fine.
video.
I want to ride on it.
We've got video.
Well, first, quickly, Qatar. I trust Qatar like I trust a rest stop bathroom.
This could only be from someone with prior knowledge and experience.
Senator Foghorn Leghorn. Yeah.
Yeah. And so for those of you who thought that Senator Larry Craig was a unicorn, maybe not.
When I heard him say that, I just burst out laughing. I thought,
So, Bill, I mean, I'm sure that you probably have your copy of the Constitution over there in Portugal because you carry it wherever you go. Tell us about the emoluments clause and whether this would be in violation of that. And by the way, this whole idea about getting this jet, Secret Service would have to go through it with a fine-tooth comb. By the time that they fit it for use, for a U.S. president, he's probably going to be out of office, so it's not going to really be serving as an Air Force One. It'll go straight to the
Any
president.
doubt that that's what he wants it for? Is there any doubt that Trump really wants this for when he's out of office?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's obvious.
Yeah.
Because isn't the gift that after he's out of office, it goes to the Trump library?
That's
yeah.
I think that's
the
exactly what it's
proposal, as I read it.
Well, actually, Nancy, that might not be a bad idea, because I think that the only thing that's going to be reading material in the library is going to be the safety card in the plane.
And the remaindered version of the last 10 Trump books.
When I lived in DC, China was building a new embassy. They had only Chinese workers. They didn't trust any American workers to build it. And there's a reason for that. And to have another country give us, I mean, the security reasons.
The Trojan horse, I mean, there's also, it's just absurd. And it's an old airline. They can't get rid of it. It's been
there was
years, 4 years out of tarmac. It's not a fucking gift.
Hey, you guys got to be fit. It's the president. Let him have what he wants.
The Wall Street Journal, I think, did that story that they said the reason they want to get rid of this is because it's like you said, it's been parked for a few years. And so, it's like finding some piece of crap in your closet and saying, here. And they knew how to hit him in, the most vulnerable spot ever, because it's all tricked out in gold, so it's his favorite color. So
Joel, that's a mighty big amount of privilege. I mean, I would take a Wright brothers plane, just as somebody gave it to me. And here you're going to turn down a 747-8.
I know. You'd have to be stupid to turn down a gift.
Because Air Force One isn't nice enough. I mean, really.
Are any of you affluent graybeards? And I'm talking about Bill and Steve and maybe Joel. Are any of you guys old enough to have ridden on a 747 back when the upper deck was like really? Okay,
a lounge.
It was like a cocktail lounge, and if you were in, I believe, first class, you could walk up this spiral staircase.
I aspire to that.
In the front of
Nancy, the original 747 came into service in 1970.
Right.
And you didn't have to fly first class. All you had to do was be a precocious boy who wanted to go to the cockpit back when they used to let you in the cockpit mid-flight, before my people ruined everything on 9/11.
But they were my people.
Well, I'm sorry. That's right. I'm British. Yeah, those people.
So what was it like? What was it like?
I don't know. I didn't get up there. I was on the plane. I saw the staircase.
I'm asking Saeed, who actually went up there. Was it nice?
I got up there too.
Did they give you a martini? Was it like being partying with James Bond?
Nancy. I mean, all I wanted was my pair of wings. I didn't care about the drinks or the philandering that clearly was happening up there.
No, I was going to ask you, did you get a spa treatment and all that?
Beverly, if you want a spa treatment, you should fly Virgin Atlantic. They have in their upper class. And then also, if you fly Emirates first class, you actually can take a shower on the plane.
Yeah,
I can't fly anything Virgin.
But by the way, we have video of an not a MAGA person.
Hold on. Bill wants to say something.
Oh
no, I was just as if the video was about a virgin. I was just.
I got a problem with these Trump folks. It's not that y'all, it's not that they're corrupt, although they are. It's not that they're evil, although they are. It's not that they're women-hating, racist, unqualified dickheads who couldn't run a Dunkin' Donuts without burning it down. No, my problem is these people are goofy-ass mother.
I love her so much.
She is. She's great.
So part of this whole issue regarding the Qatar plane is the president's trip to the Middle East, his first overseas sojourn since coming into office for the second time. And I believe it was one of his first trips, if not the first trip that he took during his first term, where he held that big globe with the Saudi king. What do you make of this trip? And so I guess we can talk about a few different things here. We can talk about how this is going to benefit him personally. And we can also talk about the foreign policy implications that are going on. So not dealer's choice, but your choice.
I think the conflict of interests are just crazy. I mean, his son Eric was just there. They're talking about opening a resort or something, I think in Saudi Arabia or United Arab Emirates or one of those places. I mean, it's so crooked. Trump is just not to be trusted. I mean, he's got his hand out the whole time. But I do have one little video.
After his motorcade was escorted to Qatar's administrative office today by camels and horses, President Trump said, quote, "We appreciate those camels. I haven't seen camels like that in a long time. Probably not since his last cognitive test."
That's a Bactrian camel, which is not indigenous to the Middle East. That you'll find up in the Gobi Desert in Mongolia.
Wow.
I'm just saying.
That's
There's
the
a
zoo
couple
house,
across the
right?
street from me at the Detroit Zoo.
Yeah, the dromedary camels are the ones you find in the Middle East, the ones who are the subject of beauty pageants and the like. Steve, if you sat, yes, hypothetical question.
If I sat
yes.
for 25 minutes, I might have come up with Bactrian and dromedary, but I could never, if you held a shotgun to my head, I would not have been able to tell you which one was which, but go ahead.
Well, that's not a prerequisite when you're in the Middle East to choose which one there, Nancy. So don't worry. Steve.
So again, I think that people are trying to analyze what's going on. Why is he there, and this, and that, and the other. If you think about it, look at him there. He's as comfortable as he could possibly be. Why? They're autocrats. He would like to be an autocrat. More importantly, they're kleptocrats. It's a kleptocracy, like all of these kinds of places, and that's exactly him. So when he has his hand out there, these guys are smart enough to know, sure, we do that too. When maybe we have to kill a few of our citizens, maybe we have to lock up a few citizens, but we steal too. So he's comfortable there because these are his kind of people. This is what you keep in mind. The Qataris, they're the ones that they're friendly with Hamas. They've got Hamasniks sitting there in their country. They treat everybody like crap. This is what he's used to, and this is what he likes. And I think there's a lot of analysis that goes on and just misses that point. These are his peeps, and that's why he's having a good time.
They have similar taste in interior decorating. So.
Yeah.
But I mean, as far as the policy implications, we've got, for example, lifting the sanctions on Syria, him meeting with the leader of Syria, Ahmed al-Shara, saying that I want them to succeed. Apparently, Secretary of State Marco Rubio has tried to dial this back, saying, well, there's going to be certain kinds of waivers in place and a bit of backtracking because it seems like it caught people by surprise. He's gone to Saudi Arabia, he's gone to Qatar, he's gone to the UAE, inked a $142 billion arms deal with Saudi Arabia, total investment by Saudi Arabia of $600 billion, a total investment of the region of $1 trillion, no visit to Israel, and apparently no consultation with Netanyahu. Yep, see.
That's the only bright side I see in this entire thing. Hopefully, unlike Biden, who allowed Bibi to do whatever he wanted, basically, for all this time. As the situation gets worse, and if anybody's reading the newspaper, I don't watch TV, but just read. I mean, you're talking about starving an entire population of people. We're not talking about war anymore. Starving people. And I don't know if that's the reason. It's probably not the reason that Trump, because I don't think he gives a shit if people are starving either. But I'm hopeful that if he finally pulls the plug on Bibi, then maybe things will change. Because as long as you're letting him do whatever he wants, you guys are seeing what he's done. It's gotten worse and worse and worse. So I'm hoping.
I agree completely with you, Steve. Not only, and I didn't see this when I was in the States, but I did pick it up on the news here. What he's now doing in the West Bank, with the bulldozers going in and plowing down homes. I mean, he's now moving into the West Bank. It's going to get just as bad there. I agree completely with Steve. If something doesn't happen quickly, Palestinian people will.
Well, Bill, the reason why we're not hearing about this is because the Diddy trial started. So, prioritize. I'll give you.
I haven't heard anything about the Diddy trial over here. That's
okay. All right, Allan.
I'm reading the Israeli press, and they've been acknowledging that Hamas has been negotiating directly with the U.S. that Netanyahu's stock is going down in the power structure there, and which it should. And I mean, Biden was in a situation during the election where he was already losing the Arab vote. He was going to lose the Jewish vote if he really came down hard. Now that's all off the table. You can deal with Netanyahu the way you should deal with him, which is by basically grabbing him by the scruff of the neck and saying, "This is what you're going to do now, and shut the fuck up." And
we'll see if he does. We will see if he does. Again, I think I read this in the Atlantic. I was trying to read things this morning, but one of the amazing things is that the reservists in Israel are now beginning to not show up. And I read a really compelling story about his mother pleaded with him not to join at the beginning of the war, and he said, "Mom, I won't be able to live with myself if I don't." He wrote her a letter this week saying, "Mom, I won't be able to live with myself if I don't stop." And, I think everybody's seeing it for what it is. But, and this guy was talking about the fact that he was on his 4th tour, and the extreme religious right still is being exempted from showing up. Because Bibi doesn't want to offend that voting bloc in the Knesset. So,
boy, you think the United States is screwed up, man? It's like I can't imagine being like a moderate sister type of Israeli.
Bill, would that explain Netanyahu's bravado of saying, "Well, we don't really need the U.S. anymore, and we're making moves to go this alone"? I mean, is that the audience that he's really playing to?
What one would wonder. I mean, look, you wonder, given what's happened, whether he does.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think he's trying. I think he's trying to threaten the U.S. and stuff like that. But the U.S. is holding the cards. Israel still needs the U.S. for a lot of things, and the U.S. should take advantage of that now and stop the shit that's going on. That Netanyahu has never had a plan for the day after the war. It's like the war continues on, and they just bombed. Who knows? They probably killed 100 people to try to kill the latest Hamas leader, whatchamacallit's brother, and that can go on forever. Those guys get replaced all the time. The next level of leaders go on, and they can keep saying we need to destroy Hamas. That's not the way to destroy Hamas.
Well, look at. I think anybody who thinks that this has been about destroying Hamas hasn't been paying attention. This isn't about destroying Hamas. That's not what Netanyahu's goal has been, to stay in power, not to destroy Hamas. He's been using Hamas to stay in power. And I also think that we ought to be careful to give Trump too much credit. I think that Netanyahu serves Trump's purpose, serves a purpose for Trump. It's a diversion. It's a distraction. Lets things go off over there, and it doesn't cost him anything politically. I think he and his advisors are a little more shrewd than we sometimes give him credit.
But I would imagine some of the visits that are going on with some of the Arab countries are saying, look, the starvation, the war has got to stop, I think. And Trump will be like, okay, if I can get an extra hotel, I'll see what we could do.
Well, look, again, I read this morning that these private negotiations that went on with the United States, Hamas was promised that if they released this American Israeli soldier, that food, humanitarian aid would begin to flow again immediately. It hasn't. So
the Chinese apparently have done an airlift or airdrop. So that's rather remarkable. Steve.
I just sent all you guys an article by Nahum Barnea, who's a journalist, a very respected journalist in Israel. My Israeli sister had sent it to me. I should have sent it to all you guys when I got it. But it really lays the whole thing out. I think what you got to remember with Biden, obviously we know he was a tad old and out of touch, because we're going to read that book, which I think has already come out, right, by those two journalists. But his relationship with Israel and with Bibi in particular, I think, was based on the fact that, like a lot of the older people, they have forgotten what Israel really was before Netanyahu. And if you think about it, Joel and I have talked about this. Our kids have never known an Israel where he wasn't prime minister. And so all they've seen is right-wing bullshit, stuff in the West Bank, stuff in Gaza. And I think Biden, probably because he was old and infirm, just kind of didn't pay attention to the fact of who's he's dealing with. He's not dealing with Yitzhak Shamir or with Menachem Begin or any of those kind of guys. And I think that's part of what the problem is. And I can tell you this, and it's kind of in that article I sent you, and it's in a number of other ones I've read from Israeli journalists, not American journalists. What's going to happen is, if they don't do anything about what Bibi's doing, Israel is going to become literally a pariah state. It'll be North Korea, because the rest of the world, including the Europeans, everybody's had it, because everybody can see what's going on. And if they don't do something about it, they're going to wind up literally, if the Americans don't support them, who's going to?
Alan.
The one thing I'll say, I think Biden knew what was going on. I think Biden totally, I mean, if you read some of the things, he didn't like Netanyahu. He thought Netanyahu was an asshole, but the election was there. And I think he had to navigate, and his hands were tied to a certain degree in terms of how much he could just slam down and say, forget it, no more support until you do this or that. I think he was aware that things were really fucked up there, and Netanyahu was really fucked up. But I think he, with the election and stuff like that, I think he had a hard time.
I think, Alan, if you look at Biden's record going all the way back to his election in the 80s, and if you look at him on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, he's always been very categorical in his support for Israel. So I think that does predate Netanyahu. Why don't we go to a quick commercial?
Okay. I will.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
I have a nephew that works down the hall from Eric Sabri, and he says he is the funniest man in the entire city county building.
Well, he did give us that commercial where he's like in the barber chair. So, I think
there's
some support for that.
Wouldn't you
He
just
really
love
is.
it
He
if
has
he
a
went
great
to a
sense of humor.
commercial and he said, "Hi, I'm Eric Sabri," and started talking about the show?
That would be
Just came onto the show. And I wanted to say this about what Steve just said. I just thought it'd be great. Can I just pick up on the last comment about Biden and Israel and what Alan said and what Saeed said? Because I agree weirdly on this one with both of you. I do think that Alan, first of all, that I'd like to believe that Biden was a good enough person that he would have done the right thing in spite of the election. But I agree with Saeed that I think he used the election because he was such a staunch supporter of Israel. He could not bring it on himself to change direction, despite the fact that there was a right-wing fascist at the helm of the Israeli government.
There's a really good column in the New York Times today by Michelle Goldberg about did anybody else read it? About the, there you go. About the, how did so many Democrats look the other way about Biden's old age
decline
and
issues.
Yeah, his issues, and it's obviously pegged to this new Jake Tapper, whatever the other guy's book. And she says, had Biden been younger, Tapper and Thompson suggest, he might have been more forceful on the border. I suspect that his anachronistic view of Israel, dating back to the heyday of labor Zionism, is partly responsible for his refusal to stand up to Benjamin Netanyahu.
That's what I was telling you. When I read Michelle's article, I said, you're absolutely right. And there's a big benefit to having a sister in her 70s who's been living there for 50 years.
I'm sorry, did you your sister? Are you talking about your sister?
I'm saying there's a big benefit for me. I've got somebody who's been there all this time, and my late brother-in-law. So when you read bullshit in the paper, or when Bibi's lying in English to us or lying in Hebrew to the Israelis, I have always had someone to tell me the truth. And as I told you guys before, my brother-in-law was a paratrooper in 2 wars. It wasn't like some left-wing guy, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
So anyway.
But to your point, Nancy, that's a good question, because the Democrats did that and couldn't see it the same way the Republicans didn't see it with Ronald Reagan, you know, with age and everything like that. But I agree with Allan, when you're in the midst of that election year, and even though he had long support for Israeli, but that election year, and you've been serving longer as an elected official, who's really going to tell you anything? Because you're going to look at them and say, I've been doing this with some of you before you were born.
Right.
So it's hard.
Well, Beverly, speaking of 2 countries that actually did begin bombing in 5 minutes, India and Pakistan.
Another stellar segue.
My people's former colonial projects. They were on the brink of certainly an escalation. 2 nuclear powers, but they have agreed to a ceasefire. And a walking back. And Steve, I think to the point that you made regarding Israel potentially becoming a pariah state, Israel has certainly burnished its relationship with India, and particularly the regime of Narendra Modi, and in fact supplied India with drones, 78 of which were apparently dropped by the Pakistan military. And also the Pakistan Air Force dropped 3 French Rafale jets, and then 2 different Russian made jets, a MiG and a Sukhoi, which my inside sources say is actually what caused the Indians to panic and actually ground their entire air force, which then led to being amenable to a ceasefire. Do you think that this sort of miniature, I shouldn't even say miniature, with 2 nuclear powers, proxy war, with ostensibly the West on one side with India and China supplying Pakistan with not only weapons that they are co-manufacturing, but also with the technology. Was this a way to see how good Chinese weaponry really is in the field?
Well, it's
something to think about all week.
But I think that more directly to your point, this is the risk that we face with Trump. The collapse of the West creates an atmosphere in which the testing of these theories and these proxy wars can become much more serious. And, you know, I was terrified when I was reading about what was going on over there, because who's to stand up to anything right now?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Bill, but I mean,
don't have a Western alliance.
But you've got 2 countries that are now, I mean, almost 78 years old that have apparently been fighting for hundreds of years.
Right.
So,
but it's a proxy. I agree with you. I mean, look, it's like the Palestinians and the Israelis. The problem is when you don't have any balance between the 2 sides, these proxy wars can become much more serious and much more risky. You know, this is how we got into trouble in World War I.
Mm-hmm.
Well, among many others, or inheriting conflicts like with Vietnam. But in case you're wondering if the United States still is receiving your wretched refuse and your huddled masses, fear not, because the United States has decided to resettle white Afrikaners as refugees. Except, of course, the U.S. Episcopal Church has refused to help the U.S. government in resettling these poor people, who some of them, according to their own social media, are pretty virulently anti-Semitic as well. So,
the
finally,
photographs,
people are supporting white men. I'm so happy. Oh
the photographs of that crew said it all. You know, plump, dressed in, you know, plump, round, rosy cheeks, dressed in, you know, higher end sportswear, tugging enormous wheelie suitcases. One guy had a cooler that I recognized because I got my husband one for his last birthday that costs, it's one of these higher tech coolers like a Yeti that costs like over $200. You know, it's it was shameful. I mean, the idea that we are cutting off people, there's well, I could go off on a 2-hour rant about our immigration policy, but
back when I flew on that 747, Nancy, I think they called those refrigerators. But Alan,
I think it's important that we replace some of the dying anti-Semites in this country. So you have to do a worldwide, scouring of the world.
Alan, have you given serious thought to cryogenic freeze? Because maybe that's the solution. Well, not to think that Democrats aren't pushing back at the president and all of his outlandish behavior. Now comes word that Sri Thanadar, congressman of Michigan 13, had gone ahead and tried to file articles of impeachment, which apparently, due to blistering a program by the establishment in his party, has decided to withdraw him. But he said that he's still going to keep fighting against whatever corruption is. But it did land him a negative endorsement. Rashida Tlaib from neighboring Michigan 12 has endorsed his primary challenger. Is this shaping up to be the race that we all should watch, even if it's the race we all didn't need?
I think here, the 13th congressional district has always been so disorganized. I mean, who knows what? I mean, it's crazy that people, the candidates in Detroit can't get their shit together to knock out a guy like Sri, who's, who does
not a lot of money. But
something has to be done. But, from what I've been hearing, there are plans. I don't know which side or which candidate they'll be backing, but they're not going to wait, So I'm keeping my ear to the grind. So they're trying to get it together now and start early to see who could be a viable opponent against the current congressperson. As relate to the impeachment, I don't see where that's going to go, but good try. But then maybe it's also a distraction on the funds, which pot the funds came to, for his campaign or for his, letting the community outreach, know what he's doing. So this could be a distraction, this impeachment deal, I think.
So, Rashida picked some bad time. It did some bad timing for her to do it on the heels of this impeachment attempt. She pushed out a press release that said it was because nobody was there from his office during the flooding in their district. The fact of the matter is, for Rashida Tlaib to be considered the person who would say, I'm not going to support this guy because he's too extreme, it pales a bit. It just doesn't work very well. But look, his money got him elected. I'm afraid his money may keep him there unless there's an organized effort to get behind a single candidate.
Well, there's other elections coming up next year, including that for, of course, all three big universities in Michigan, Wayne State, Michigan State, and the University of Michigan. And now comes word of one of the University of Michigan regents, Sarah Hubbard, in perhaps a bit of a concern regarding a potential conflict of interest with her ties to Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. Is this something that is a tempest in a teapot, or is it something that might have legs?
As much as it is a conflict, and I think she recused herself now. She was, I think, a lobbyist for Blue Cross, and they were negotiating with the University of Michigan for medical care. I think nobody really pays that close attention. Maybe in Ann Arbor, maybe a little bit more, but I think in general, these are statewide elections. I don't know that people really give a shit about those elections. That's my
but they should.
Yes.
Well,
the fact of the matter is that they should. I mean, we've had defense attorneys during the scandal at Michigan State University who were defense attorneys who defended the kind of things that were going on with molesters. People ought to pay attention to these elections. They're important. People ought to pay attention to all elections. And look, this kind of conflict of interest has existed at this level forever. And she's certainly no worse than anybody else. And I'm not trying to pick on her But I am trying to pick on the people of the state of Michigan. We ought to pay a lot more attention to these elections than we do.
I agree.
Well, Bill,
overall, more people need to vote. You're right, Bill. I agree.
Right. Also,
yeah, Barb.
But isn't it? Go ahead.
Oh, this same accusation followed Gretchen Whitmer when she first ran for governor, because her father was the head of Blue Cross Blue Shield in Michigan or something like that. And the accusation was she would not be able to effectively talk about health care in the state. She ended up, like I said, I'll say all along, Whitmer did much better than I ever dreamt in a million years that she would do. So that didn't help it, but I think that is just a regular, people have paid. And they should be, people should be aware of it.
Right.
The difference is that with Whitmer, it was her father.
Right.
This is far more direct. This is the woman herself.
Yes. Yes.
Bill, I seem to recall a few years ago during the COVID years that Ron Weiser, when he was U of M regent, was trying to block the university from shutting down. And of course, it probably wasn't lost, and I'm sure it was no coincidence that he's also one of the largest property owners and landlords in Ann Arbor, and so he would have lost a whole lot of rent if students were going to stay home and not be on campus. But hey, what do I know about connecting the dots?
Well, just for a minor little detail of Ron Weiser, this is the same guy who claimed he played football for Bo Schembechler. The problem was he graduated U of M before Schembechler came there as a coach. He never played football. Anyway, and
in his head.
Steve, we didn't have Google back then. He didn't Google.
Yeah, maybe he thought everybody that played there would kind of not really realize that Bo wasn't there in 1964. Anyway.
Well, Steve, you're a member of the U of M Hall of Fame, right?
No, of the Michigan Jewish Sports Hall of Fame.
Michigan Jewish Sports Hall of Fame. So speaking of halls of fame, and this, of course, isn't yours because I don't think either of them was of the tribe, but it was just announced that Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson have been reinstated in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. I'm sorry, in the Major League Baseball. I'm sorry, in the Major League Baseball. Correct.
Making them eligible for the Hall of Fame.
That's right.
So he was the best hit. Pete Rose was the best hitter in baseball. The best hitter. He deserves to be in the Hall. I don't care what.
I'll bet you that he's going to get it. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I got that.
We were talking. We've never met before. We were talking in makeup earlier.
Let's talk about we never met before.
What?
Let's talk about that. I mean, all those records I got, and I got to go to prison, be on the show.
No.
That was funny. Steve, I believe you may have an opinion about this.
I'm actually interested in everybody else's quick opinions, and then I'll tell you why I think what I think. Joel sounds like he thinks he should be eligible for being because
I think his achievements speak for themselves. He was a Hall of there's a lot of rascals in the Hall of Fame, a lot of people who are pieces of shit in the Hall of Fame. His ability on the field was unparalleled. Nobody has approached what he has approached. He hustled. He was the epitome of great baseball. Shoeless Joe Jackson, another player, who unfortunately his whole legacy has been tainted. He deserves to be a Hall of Fame. From what I've heard, he was another great player. So I want them in the Hall of Fame. They're dead.
I'm just going to give the counterpoint to Joe's position.
Then what is the point of having Rule 21D, which is posted in every major league clubhouse and tells people that you absolutely cannot bet on baseball games that you're involved in or you will be permanently ineligible? Is there now an asterisk next to it? Unless the president of the United States, who is a fucking asshole himself, thinks you're okay and calls you Charlie Hustle in executive order.
That's not right.
And I think he deserves the recognition of being a great baseball player. He was a great baseball player.
He was a great baseball player.
Does the fact that he disgraced the game counterbalance that? I mean, I think that's the counterbalance.
I agree, but I have perspective. I think if it was last year, I think he should get it. He's deceased, and my reason is I think when you can be a felon and a president, it broke the mold. I see what Bill and you guys are saying, but hey, if you can be a felon and a president, you could get a Hall of Fame for the great work you did in your afterlife. So
I think a good friend of mine is getting ready to emigrate to Canada. He's married to a Canadian, and they're making plans to leave the United States behind. And so he's going through all this stuff, asking what do I want to move in a year. And he sent me a picture of some postage stamps. He used to be a stamp collector as a little boy, and he sent me a picture of these postage stamps with Hitler's face on them. Okay. And he thought, maybe these are worth something. But it turns out they're not, because Hitler, like Trump, liked to put his image on everything, and they're very common. So there are a lot of Hitler postage stamps out there. But he did say that he's expecting Trump to put his face on something permanent. A stamp, the $20 bill. I figure Mount Rushmore is probably a foregone conclusion because it's South Dakota. And all I'm going to say is I can take comfort from the fact that I've been to Mount Rushmore. I've seen it. It's no big deal. It's hard to get to. I can ignore South Dakota for the rest of my life. And I think that's what I'm going to have to do with the Baseball Hall of Fame and Pete Rose. It's like, who gives a shit? I don't give a shit, so therefore I'm choosing not to give a shit.
It's time to change the face of the Colonel now from the KFC. It's time.
They might re-chisel the Crazy Horse Monument because of that, Nancy. Alan.
They might.
I don't know that I have. I'm not sure about my feelings on it, but I think it's interesting now. If you watch baseball, you watch Tiger baseball, whatever, sponsored by FanDuel, sports betting. They put the odds up there on FanDuel. If this person gets a homer, the payoff is this. If this person gets, gambling has just permeated professional sports now.
It's true, but I don't know that we have to retrofit.
It has always been. From the very first sporting event by the cavemen, somebody bet on it.
Yeah.
Well, before we go to Steve's Anchorman thing, I have only one thing to say about this: keep calm and play cricket. Okay, Steve.
So here's the way I look at it. I believe Joel's correct, and I think he was saying it for the correct reasons. The point, in my view, and I would say that most athletes agree with this. The point of a Hall of Fame is not to have a bunch of great people in it. It's not to have people who you want to follow across the world because they're just wonderful, wonderful people. What you're looking at is your career. Rose had 4,265 hits, way more than anybody else in history. He did it over a long period of time. As far as I'm concerned, Halls of Fame have nothing to do with whether you gamble or you didn't gamble, unless, of course, his gambling was when he was a manager. If somehow there was proof, or he admitted it, or somebody proved it, that it affected his performance in the game, like steroids, which I'm going to get to in a second. That's a different situation. Shoeless Joe Jackson, you got to remember, was accused of it. Now, mind you, this is over 100 years ago. Supposedly, they fixed the World Series. That's what the whole thing was about. If that's true, he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame because he participated in fixing games. But Barry Bonds, for instance, which is my favorite example. Everybody hates Barry Bonds. He's a complete asshole from everything everybody ever says. But I can tell you guys, I almost was going to look it up, but I didn't have time before we went on the show. If you look at his statistics before he ever touched a steroid, the man was the MVP of the league 3 times. He won 6 or 7 Gold Gloves. His batting average, his career average was like 325 before the steroids. In all honesty, if I were voting, Barry Bonds. See, what Wesco is saying is not true. It depends what kind of cheating. If you're like Sosa and McGuire, where you were ordinary players and then you eat steroids and all of a sudden you hit 65 homers, that's bullshit. And you don't belong in the Hall of Fame. Rose was never accused of anything like that. Whether he's an asshole or not, it seems undisputed that he's an asshole. That's the case. How is Ty Cobb there, who was one of the biggest racists in the history of the world? So that my thinking is that you have to judge in any Hall of Fame, not just baseball. In any Hall of Fame, you have to judge somebody by what they actually did on the field or on the court or on wherever the hell, whatever sport they're playing. Unless they were taking substances that affected their performance. The guy who's really going to be a question is Roger Clemens and Alex Rodriguez. They had a good column in the New York Times about that because Clemens was a Hall of Fame pitcher. There's no doubt he ate steroids, but if you look at his numbers long before the steroids came around, he should be in the Hall. And he's another asshole. He's in it. Rodriguez, great numbers, but they'll probably never get there because more people think like Nancy than think like me. But that's my opinion.
But as long as they're consistent too across the board, Steve, as long as they're consistent, because sometimes things are just, colorblind is not colorblind.
Oh, wait a minute. Consistent? You want to talk about consistent? These are the people Nancy's sticking up for. Think about this, you guys. Alan Trammell and Lou Whitaker played next to each other for how many years? 15 years. And their statistics are literally 7 hits more, 13 doubles more. And Lou Whitaker doesn't get elected to the Hall of Fame as a player, and he doesn't get in with the veterans, these saints that Nancy thinks are so wonderful.
He was a Hall of Fame player.
That's insane.
Greatest leadoff hitter.
All right, okay.
I mean, he was a great.
I yield once again. The attorney has bested me in the court of
What's next, Nancy?
opinion.
What's next, Nancy? That there's more to Detroit than Motown? I mean,
no, I will die on that hill.
Dogs and cats living together. I mean, come on now.
You got to get to the mayoral race, right? Not the mayoral race, but yeah, you got to.
Those extra 4 Skittles that I ate that disqualified me from the Lifetime Fitness 50-meter swim. I'll never make the Hall of Fame. Anyways, Alan, let's go to the last segment.
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
All right. So, well, Nancy, since you were pretty much, I don't know, what does the new generation say? Owned on that one? Why don't you start with the Schmuck?
Okay, good, because I have a feeling somebody else is going to grab this one. I had a list of 3, and we already covered 2 of them. And so the first was the Afrikaners, and the second were the Biden enablers, the people who cost or gave us Trump 2.0. So I'm giving it today to Kristi Noem, who our Homeland Security Secretary, who it was revealed last night by the Daily Beast is supposedly working with a producer, the producer of Duck Dynasty, to pitch a reality TV show called The American, where immigrants will compete in a string of challenges across the country for the honor of fast-tracking their way to U.S. citizenship. This is sourced on a memo, a pitch memo, and if you woke up today and thought you could not be more ashamed of the way your country has been deteriorating lately, well, welcome to reality. There is still bottom to be found.
Only the strong will survive. Oh, I can't wait to see it.
God,
all this Nancy.
To be a star.
You know, see how well they do.
The best term I've heard online to refer to the Homeland Security Secretary is calling her a Timu Lara Croft.
Yeah, she is a Timu Lara Croft. She's also Our Lady of the Hair Extensions. So
and apparently she wants a Gulfstream 5 to be her mode of transportation.
Exactly.
She wants a G5. So there you go.
Okay,
Fish.
Mine is kind of simple. I've kind of ignored him, and we've all kind of ignored him, actually. But I decided that our man Russell Vought, the OMB director, he lays low. In fact, an article I read about him today described him as the kind of guy, if you saw him somewhere, you just think he's some older, bald-headed, stooped-over guy. You wouldn't know that what's he trying to do. He's the one who was behind Project 2025. He believes wholeheartedly in the unitary executive theory, right? And he believes that you should be able, this is to me the craziest, get rid of all the people that work for the federal government and replace them with loyalists, which is exactly what they're trying to do. And we've all kind of let this guy slide, it seems like, all this time, because the rest of them are such towering assholes that they get our attention every week. But I got to say, Russell Vought, you caused a lot of problems, and you're still causing a lot of problems. And even though you hide with your little ass with your head down like this, I recognize you as Schmuck of the Week.
That's all right. Bill, just in case the electricity is also something you're paying by the hour for the hotel room there, why don't you go next?
I wanted to. It's tempting to do Trump. I know that we're not supposed to do Trump because it's named after him, but I wanted to point out a thing I read in the New York Times. It said by 3 Yale. Have you guys read this? The 3 Yale professors. I'm sorry. 3 Yale professors who said, we studied, in name of the article is, we studied fascism and we're leaving the United States.
Wow.
Terrifying article. And so Trump certainly deserves to be in it, but we've already covered him, so I'm going to add him as his dear friend Netanyahu for what he's doing to the Palestinian people and his ever disgraceful efforts to try and eliminate the Palestinians from the face of the earth.
Those three academics, I think, are all heading to the University of Toronto, which is definitely the University of Toronto's gain. So absolutely. So thank you.
Yeah, by the way, I'm wondering what's going to happen to Yale funding after that article came up. But
here's by the way.
And now it's time for Deadline Detroit's nominees for Schmuck of the Week.
That was our original.
Barb.
Well, it was called the Donald G. Trump. The G stands for genius. Schmuck of the Week round. So that was Craig's thing.
Barb.
Me, right? Alex Thompson and Jake Tapper. I feel pretty strongly that no matter how Joe Biden was, the relentless assault on him and the ignoring of Trump's equal cognitive decline. Equal cognitive decline. And what we have as a result is we had a functional government. We had a completely functional government. All of the, we had Pete Buttigieg. We had Deb Haaglund running our national parks. We had people that knew what they were doing and that were really good at what they were doing. And now we have somebody equally as dotty, if possibly not more, and a completely dysfunctional government. And we can thank the mainstream legacy media for hammering and hammering away. I agree that Joe Biden should have done what he said he was going to do when he ran the first time, and that was step aside. I agree. And I agree that he passed, who knows how it really is. I don't know. But I just know that because of people like Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson, we are so completely fucked. And we had our choice between two crazy old men, and this is the one that we got. I also want to really quickly say, and I cannot find it anywhere, but I got a ad on Facebook for a new resort in South Dakota. A beautiful resort, a gorgeous new resort. It's near Deadwood. It's very expensive. And every single human being in that little tiny commercial was white, like Afrikaner white. So more Kristi Noem. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever been to South Dakota? Except for the natives, it's a pretty white place. So
yeah. You can drive across on I-90 and you never have to actually move your steering wheel.
Yeah,
it is just absolutely
until you stop at Wall Drugs because they have
free ice. That's right. That's right. Joel,
I'm gonna go with RFK Jr., who literally swam in shit. So, he took a nice little dive into a creek or a stream, as I understand it, that
Rock Creek,
a depository for raw sewage. It was downstream from the depository of raw sewage, just plagued with God knows what. He took a wonderful swim with his grandkids. He submersed himself completely. I'm hoping right now he's feeling the effects of that. So he's clearly my schmuck. He's a schmuck of everybody's week. He's an embarrassment. But one thing I do want to tell you, Pete Rose I took my son to get an autograph. I took him to every autograph show that I could when he was a kid. And Pete Rose was such a gentleman and so kind. He spent 5 minutes with my son, talking about baseball, talking about Little League. And I'll tell you, it made an impression on Jonah, it made an impression on me. It was like Sparky Anderson kind. And Sparky was the same way. 5 minutes, talk to you, get to know you a little bit. So my view of Pete Rose changed after I saw him interact with my son. I just said that right.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Bev.
I'll take
Mine
it.
is just a little local, closer to home. It's a segue into what Barb had said. We need wealth and wealthiness and fitness more than ever. So little David Coker, who wants to put his hands in the jar, who was an aide, of course, Allan, you wrote about this, an aide to one of the lawmakers. But I have a couple friends that live there. And if you've ever been to that place, you can clearly tell, like a lot of places, we need our fitness and our wellness. And he stole a little less than $900,000. So he's my schmuck of the week. And I'm sick of these people stealing. Some of this federal dollars are being dried up as it is. So the money need to go to where it support our elderly and our youth. So, he's my schmuck. You work for a lawmaker, and then you decide to do something like this. So he's my schmuck, Mr. David Coker.
By the way, I forgot to mention, did anyone see the video clip of Charlie LaDuff interviewing Sri Tanadar and seeing if you could name the 5 gross points?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It was.
I would have asked him to name the 5 in per capita income and then in prestige among other gross pointers, because they're different. So
I would have just settled with alphabetical order and see him screw that one up. Allan.
I mean, I agree with Barb to some degree, but I have to say, I agree. I don't fault Jill. Jill Biden's my schmuck, and I don't fault her for helping out, like Nancy Reagan helped Ronald Reagan make it through his term, and I'm okay with that. But I think she was trying to get him another term, and I think she was one of the big players in covering that up. And my other person is Carrie Lake, who I think is one of the most toxic human beings on earth, who's helping. They got back the Voice of America people. Now they fired 600 of them. And she's just a toxic human being.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. My schmuck of the week is Ahmed Ghanim of Ferndale, who had unsuccessfully run against Haley Stevens in the 2024 primary for Michigan 11, lost by a margin of 87 to 13%. I didn't go into the decibels because that would be too kind to him. But he posted on his Facebook yesterday a picture of Congresswoman Debbie Dingell leaned back and asleep, and wrote the following, quote, "Ah, yes, democracy at its finest, where a 71-year-old career politician like Debbie Dingell keeps representing Ann Arbor, a city bursting with tens of thousands of young people until they go home after the term ends, because nothing screams fresh ideas like inheriting your husband's congressional seat after he held it for half a century. This is what happens when you don't have term limits. Congress becomes a retirement home with a voting record. Term limits don't just fight corruption. They help some folks transition gracefully to where they probably should be anyway. Bingo night at the senior center," end quote. Lost in this was context. Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, and not the only one who was taking a bit of a eye rest, was involved in a 17-hour marathon session of the House and Ways and Means Committee in order to try to deal with this big, beautiful budget bill that is going through. Most of these Congress people had been up for 31 hours straight. I think they finally adjourned around 5 o'clock in the morning. And I don't know about Mr. Ghanim's stamina, but I know that I would probably be taking a shut-eye halfway through next week's Mission Impossible movie, and that's only 3 hours. But to impugn her for age, to impugn her with a suggestion of nepotism and that she doesn't deserve to be there for any number of reasons, and particularly with the photo. Not only are you the schmuck of the week, Ahmed Ghanim, I am so glad you lost, even to a mediocre candidate like Haley Stevens. But what a terrible human being to go ahead and impugn a congresswoman who, agree with her or not on some of the issues, shows up and really represents her district extremely well.
Plus, anybody who knows anything about the state legislature will tell you that term limits is the worst idea we ever had, and it kind of ruined it. So there.
Yeah.
Well, I really want to support Saeed on this. You can say what you want about Debbie on any particular issue. One of the hardest working people in Congress.
She is. She really is.
If you don't admire her efforts and her stamina, you're not paying attention in Congress.
Yep. And she will get back to you.
With her on many issues. I really have.
And she'll get back with you herself. It's not just staffers,
Yeah.
And she really does.
She shows up when you don't even expect her to show up. If she hears something's going on, Debbie Dingell's here. She's great.
She is a fine human being. I may disagree with her on policy issues from time to time, but a fine, hardworking human being.
She does her job.
Yes.
There you go. Well, thank you again for a wonderful round the world, round the state, round the nation, and round the city view of the week that was. Thank you, Beverly Watts. Thank you, Joel Sklar. Thank you, Steve Fishman. Thank you, Bill Seikaly. When are you coming back, man?
Tuesday. Thank you, Ira Todd, for saying that it was a great show.
Yeah, definitely. We love Ira. So.
Thank you, Barb Ingalls. Thank you, Nancy Derringer. And thank you, and with the last word, always, Allan Lengel.
Drive home safely.
Enjoy the weather, folks. Have a great weekend.